Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the VMblog Expert Interview Series. And today we're joined by a familiar face, our friend Carl Gersh, the SVP of Marketing at IGEL. Carl, as always, it's great to see and speak with you.
Yeah, likewise, Dave. It's good to see you again.
So I know there's a lot going on over there at IGEL, and I want to learn more about it. But I have to start the conversation off and ask about the recently announced acquisition of Stratodesk. I admit it took me by surprise, although it was a good surprise. And I'm sure we could talk about this acquisition for the entire session today. But give us an overview of the acquisition of Stratodesk and talk about what the acquisition means for both the company, your partners, and the customers.
You bet. And of course, it is big news, right? Acquiring Stratodesk, oftentimes considered one of our biggest competitors. And what I'll see is this is the acquisition of Stratodesk into iGel represents strategic alignment. It's all about delivering the best vision for endpoint security and operational efficiency in the market. Now, we talk about what does this mean for customers and for our partners? Well, at a high level, what this means is that there's tons of new possibilities, right? So there's going to be expanded integration capabilities. And if you've been following some of the other news coming out of IGEL, you know that we have announced this year relationships in the IGEL Ready program with companies like Palo Alto, Zscaler, Island Browser, and the like, right? It is going to bring proven vertical market expertise to all of our customers. IGEL has made great strides in the areas of healthcare, financial services, retail, manufacturing, and the like, and we're going to be able to deliver that vertical market expertise to a wider audience. You can also look at it as an investment in security and scalability, right? By bringing those Stratodesk customers into the IGEL platform, right? They're going to get greater integration. They're going to have seamless migration paths into tools to tackle challenges like Windows 11 migration and legacy device security. Right, IGEL's UMS, is provides, I would argue, the industry's best unified management platform, and they'll benefit from that as well. Now, for our partners, there's more opportunity than ever for partners to be able to deliver again the leading secure endpoint operating system for enterprise to their customers. So, bottom line, I think it really reflects our momentum into the endpoint, you know, the secure endpoint operating system market, right? Stratedesk customers are going to benefit from the most secure OS, the most advanced endpoint management solution, and they'll be able to take advantages of the work we're doing in areas like the adaptive secure desktop, which is significantly enhancing security resiliency and cost efficiency. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more, over the course of next 20 minutes.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned Windows 11 migrations. Let's dig into another hot topic, the migrations, cyber threats taking place. Maybe if you could give us a deeper dive into how IGEL sees the workplace changing in 2025 and beyond, and talk about some of the challenges that organizations are facing today and how, they're turning to IGEL, for help for those things.
Yeah, you bet. Look, if there's a word I'd use to describe the workplace of today, it's probably dynamic, right? Users aren't always in the office. As we were talking about a little bit before we got started, there's return to office, there's people working remote, hybrid, you name it, right? Roles change, risk levels are shifting, but at some level, most organizations are still delivering the same desktop to everybody, right? This idea of like one size fits all, and they're using the same security tools around that single desktop. But the challenges they're facing are real, right? They're looking at increased threats from cyber across all sectors, right? You can't flip on or visit a website, flip on the TV without hearing about a cybersecurity issue somewhere, right? There's increased costs just overall, right? The costs have shifted, so people aren't building huge data centers as much, right? They're doing a lot more with the cloud, but costs are increasing. And as you mentioned already, Windows 11 migration is causing a certain amount of stress, right? Organizations, if we think about it, in 2020, there was a giant, everyone had to go work remote, giant push to work remote that was essentially mandated by the government. Organizations went out there and they purchased devices, right? Those devices they purchased, if I guess I say if you recall, I think we all recall that you were getting your hands on whatever device you could at that point because the demand was so high, right? No one anticipated in 2020 there would be just a huge global demand for laptops. And now we're in 2025, it's 5 years later, and a lot of those laptops are not capable of running Windows 11, right? The wake up stat for me around Windows 11 is that based on the research that we're seeing, nearly 27% or one third of enterprise endpoints can't run Windows 11. And no one's got the budget, candidly, that I know of to go out there and just replace all those devices. They enacted in 2020, emergency. They tapped into emergency funds to buy them then, and now the refresh cycle is upon us, right? Made more salient by the fact that there's a Windows migration, and organizations are trying to figure out, what do I do with all these devices? How can I get more life out of these devices? Facing not just a decrease potentially in performance, but I mean, obviously an incompatibility, with the next generation of Windows. So, so in a way, you could say, hey, legacy hardware is kind of everywhere, and maybe that's true to a certain extent. But I think this is a pretty big deal. It's a lot of challenges that organizations are facing, right? And that to me is really where IGEL comes into play, right? So we help organizations first and foremost extend device life, right? We can help you take that device that is not Windows 11 ready, move Windows to the cloud, and then use that turn that device into an IGEL device and give it another few years of life, right? We can reduce the costs people are incurring in those endpoints, not just in the acquisition, but also in managing those devices. And we can help with that idea of delivering a secure managed workspace anywhere, right? Like I said, people change, roles change. A lot of the work we're doing around security, around the adaptive desktop is designed to address that very need. And fundamentally underpinning all of this, right, is our preventative security model. And if you've come to any of our events or you've, visited our website, you know that, over the past couple of years, we've been developing this preventative security architecture, and it's all about locking down the data. It's all about reducing the attack surface, right? There's estimates that say that running IGEL OS on your endpoint reduces the attack surface of the endpoint by 95%. And in the world of trying to prevent cybercrime, in the world of trying to prevent intrusion, every percentage point matters. And then we have some new stuff, right? We have our managed hypervisor, which I was super excited to get announced at the Now Next show in Miami. But fundamentally, it's an endpoint based hypervisor that will allow you to run legacy Windows apps safely without all the security baggage. So if you still have that one app that was developed for Windows 7 that is just keeping the lights on somewhere, you don't have to have a Windows 7 machine running anymore. You have an IGEL machine running that is secure, that is manageable. And on top of that, you can then run Windows 7 in that managed hypervisor environment. Game changer gets thrown around a lot. Maybe it's, I'm marketing. I guess I'm entitled to a little bit of breathless promotion, but I do think it's a big deal. We've gotten really, really great feedback. People that heard about it in Miami earlier this year were super excited by it. I think it does really add tremendous capabilities to any enterprise organization that is still, struggling with those 3 or 4 apps that were developed by God knows who, God knows when, and they still need them to run. And the cost of recoding those apps from scratch to a modern environment really is pretty arduous. They can run it. They can run it not with let me keep my fingers crossed that it doesn't come crashing down, but run it knowing that it can run on a much more secure managed platform.
I get, keeping with this theme, this topic of discussion as we move further into the second half of 2025 and beyond, what are you seeing, hearing, and finding as the most significant opportunities for IGEL and your partners?
That's a great question. So if I'm thinking about the biggest opportunities in 2025, I could sum it up probably in 3 things, right? Security, of course, right? So security, sustainability, and resilience, right? Companies are racing to adapt or to adopt zero trust and to reduce risk. Like I said, every percentage of risk you can reduce improves your overall ability to prevent intrusion and business disruption. Organizations are trying to get more from every IT dollar. I don't want to make light of this, but I'll say that I have not met, a VP of IT or a CIO whose budget wasn't like trying to fit a twin size sheet on a king size bed. And maybe the most important part is about this concept of resiliency, right? Yeah, I say, the only thing worse than a system going down is not knowing how fast you can get it back up. So organizations, they said, there's that the colloquialism, that little, that, oh, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it's probably true. But what organizations should be looking at is how to reduce that attack surface, right? How to reduce the risk of and the percentage of when, and also if it does happen, how quickly? What is my plan to get back up and running as quickly as possible? Now, some industries are mandating it, right? So if you work in healthcare IT, we're hearing that the new HIPAA regulations are gonna put in place some stipulations around 48 hours to get back up and running. And the question I ask for those organizations, I get one approach is I guess you could just buy two of everything. I mean, that almost sounds like a bad joke, right? Like let's buy two laptops, so when the one crashes, the other one goes in. It's like the old, fearful all friends, some car buffs here, but they used to say if you like the brand Jaguar back in the day, you had to buy two because there's the one that was always going to be in the shop. But I don't think that's a great approach, right? So I think what you want to do is you want to figure out, how do I put a plan in place? How am I building out my stack so that I'm trying to again prevent that intrusion, and also if it does happen, I can get back and running. So, and then beyond that, and again, I don't know if time to talk about it today, but IT and IoT and OT, and bridging those, there's much more. We're seeing convergence on that. If anyone's stuck in the airport last summer during the CrowdStrike thing, that it's becoming more and more important. The more devices, everything's getting connected to the internet. Everything is, so your IoT and OT is really important, and being able to secure that and manage that is critical as well. I mean, how many times we see those funny, memes on LinkedIn of the digital signage that has the Windows blue screen of death, right? It does raise the question: do you need a full Windows environment, a fat client operating system running, digital signage, or do you need something to be a little more purpose built, a little fitter, a little more manageable doing that? Oh, no, I was going to say, so continue on from that, right? So we're talking about security, sustainability, and resilience. What we talked about already, IGEL, we made tremendous investment and advancement in the areas of building out, our operating system to be the most secure endpoint operating system there is, right? Underpinned by, the preventive security model, which is kind of the foundation for our preventive security architecture, which adopts a lot of the elements of zero trust in it. We talk about sustainability and how you can take old devices, put IGEL on them. And I say old devices, a device that can't run Windows 11, and an even more modern device, right? And get more life out of that device, right? For years, people talked about the fact that thin clients, one of the benefits of thin clients, in addition to reduced costs, was they ran forever, right? So I think that we're past the thin client world. IGEL is not a thin client operating system. But we do take with us, I think, the virtue of being able to give you a device that has a lifespan that's more than 3 years. And then the last part about resilience, the idea, we have a business continuity offering that'll be coming out and maybe out by the time this launches. It's available. It is partially available today. We're gonna have dual boot in August, but we have this business continuity offering that will allow you to have the IGEL operating system on your device as in a separate partition, and if something goes wrong, you hit the 911 button or the 999 button or whatever you want to call it, right? That emergency button, and boom, your device boots back up into an IGEL environment, and you have now time to try and work on the remediation of the intrusion that you have, most likely ransomware. So that's a big deal. We're gonna talk. I want to come back when we got that out in August, Dave, and we'll talk a lot more about that. But again, I think that is a pretty big deal, and we're seeing again tremendous interest from organizations who are saying, "Hey, I want to kill run Windows as my main operating system on these devices, but I want that backup, that insurance policy, that if something goes wrong, I hit this button, and boom, everyone can get back up. They can get running. They can get to core functionality, email, Teams, the Microsoft Suite, etc. While we work on remediation."
You had alluded to, you mentioned healthcare, and speaking of, different verticals over the past several months, I know IGEL's been enhancing its focus on critical sectors like healthcare, government, retail, manufacturing, and the like. How do IGEL's its preventative security model that, we talked a lot about security, and you mentioned it before as well, the recently announced IGEL managed hypervisor. how do those things help to address the unique challenges that these particular vertical markets face?
Sure. So let's start with let's start with the security angle, right? So in critical industries, downtime or breach isn't inconvenient, it's catastrophic. Right. So if you're a healthcare organization, I mean, it can truly be life or death. So making sure that, when you think about it, the single biggest, fabric that could be breached is your endpoints. Right. We all like talking about the routers and the network perimeter and securing that. And I think that's important. And we see the hackers like getting in there in the movies and stuff like that. They're always penetrating, the network. But the reality is that the endpoints, and to some extent the users that are that are operating those endpoints, are your biggest, security risk. You can't patch user error. So the best thing you can do is give them a device that can help, provide that additional level of security. And that's what the preventive security model is all about, right? So it's reducing your upfront risk. IGEL is a read-only operating system. So even if you're not a technologist listening in today, let me tell you what that means. That means that users can't install data and they can't install apps on that endpoint, right? Typically, there's no local data on that endpoint. You're delivering through a progressive web app or a secure browser or through VDI. You can also do things like app whitelisting. And we've got integrations with the identity vendors for deep identity, with integration with that for identity verification and the like, right? So reduce the risk upfront, cut down the vulnerability you have in that area, and again for these mission critical areas like government, like healthcare, retail. Maybe it's still catastrophic, right? And I'm not going to name names, but if you've been paying attention over the last couple of months, several large known retailers have been hit. They're a huge target, right? Manufacturing, same thing. A factory goes down, you're losing millions of dollars a day. So securing those endpoints, reducing that risk, critical. Now, the flip side, managed hypervisor, I said already, it's perhaps deceptively simple, but also like a really big deal, right? Run your old Windows apps safely on modern hardware without opening up vulnerabilities. So in the past, if you had an old Windows app, you had two options. I shouldn't say only option. You had two options. One, have a device that's still running Windows XP. I mean, heck, some people still have apps running on Windows 95. Right? I visited a municipality not long ago that the entire traffic light system was running on a box that was a Windows 95 box. So you can do that, right? You can say, all right, I'm going to keep this device and we're just going to, keep our fingers crossed that this Windows 95 box keeps running. Or you can use virtualization and take with it, the cost and the complexity that comes with delivering virtualization. Now, if your organization is big enough, and your portfolio of apps merits it, certainly virtualization can be a valid choice. I used to work at Citrix. I'm a big believer that virtualization solves a lot of problems. But if you got one or two apps or that you need that are critical for one or two business units, right? Or different apps for different business units, and you don't want to engage with the overhead of running a full virtualization environment, the IGEL Managed Hypervisor is a great solution, right? It's essentially you run that managed hypervisor on that IGEL device. IGEL's running underneath it. Something goes wrong, you can just use the UMS, right, our management server to get in there and manage that device, and reboot it, shut down the process, whatever you need to do, right? So you're not, and you have that security I've talked about so many times already in this conversation. So I'd say in a way it's more power, less risk. I mean, you can kind of think about it about like upgrading a classic car with a high performance engine. So your result, you get better business continuity, you have instant ransomware recovery, and from a compliance standpoint, right, you have great confidence that you can be in compliance because I don't think any compliance organization actually has in the rules that they're happy with using an operating system that is end of life, end of support, and 10 years old.
Now, not to get off of the techie stuff too much, but earlier this year, I personally had a fantastic time at the IGEL Now and Next event that took place here in the US at a really awesome venue in Miami, Florida. And I understand this fall Now and Next is coming up for the European market, and you guys are going to be, hosting that in Frankfurt. Can you share a preview of the event and discuss, why customers and partners should attend and make sure that they get that event on their calendars?
You bet, you bet. I mean, one of the things that Klaus Osterman, our CEO, when he came in, he looked at this event and he said he really wanted to take it to the next level, right? He wanted to make it a world-class event. And over the past year, past 18 months, we have worked very hard on really elevating what used to be IGEL Disrupt into the IGEL Now Next conference. And I would say that there's like no aspect of that show that we haven't looked and said, how can we make this better? How can we make it more meaningful? How can we make it more interactive? How can we jam in more content? How can we make it more fun? Right. And I appreciate the kind words about Miami. The feedback we got when we hosted in Miami Beach at the Fontainebleau Hotel early this year was great. The survey results, the attendees, the sponsors, everyone walked away with a very, very positive experience. We had more sessions than ever before. We made a ton of announcements. I think we had double the number of breakouts in Miami this year than we did over the year previous. And of course, we capped it all off with a party at the world-renowned Live nightclub featuring Shaggy on stage. It really was a great event, a pinnacle event. I was very proud of the work that my team and that IGEL had put into making that happen. Now we're going to go to Europe in the fall, and we realize we've outgrown Munich, right? We're going to deliver the same level of excitement, the same level of information, the same level of interaction and networking in Frankfurt at the Messer Center, which is a world-class conference center. And people can expect you're going to get there. We're going to be very focused on delivering more real-world customer stories and some examples. And if again things go well, we're going to have some really, really cool demos to show for that. We're going to get into deep dives on things like the adaptive secure desktop. We're going to get into deep dives on the managed hypervisor, right? So if these things sound interesting that I'm talking about, I mean, I wouldn't say wait till November to see it in Frankfurt, but certainly if you're in Frankfurt, you're going to get a chance to see this, get hands-on, and find out our latest advances in that area. You're going to get a look from about what's next from our platform, not just for our platform, but also for our key partners. For anyone listening, if you've not taken a look at the IGEL Ready partner ecosystem lately, you might be surprised, right? We have organizations like Zscaler in there now. Organizations, like I said, like Palo Alto. Organizations like CrowdStrike, right? IGEL is a secure endpoint operating system. That is the space that we're in, and the company that we're keeping are some of the world's leading cybersecurity technology companies. So I would say if anyone is involved in building secure workspaces, and I feel like that should be everybody, right? Because security is a little bit of everyone's responsibility. If you're involved in delivering a secure workspace and you're in government, healthcare, retail, manufacturing, pharma, this is your opportunity to have a first front row seat at what's going on. And as for the after party, perhaps I should leave a few things for the surprise.
Yeah.
But certainly, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it an event that you won't forget. It's gonna be like Miami was a can't miss. Our aim is to deliver a can't miss for Frankfurt.
Yeah, I don't know who, what vertical or what group wouldn't be a key target, but I definitely, as a media guy, I would say if you're in Europe, anywhere near there, this is a show to attend. This is a show to put on your calendar to keep watch for. It was a great event, and I don't know how your team does it, but every year that I've gone, I've been since the very first IGEL event. You get bigger, you get better. I guess you learn as you go, and you get feedback. But yeah, hats off to you, your team. The IGEL Now and Next event is first class.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, and listen, it's a credit to the team. They have big dreams, big ambitions. They work like crazy to put together. Again, our aim is to put together a world-class event. And it's gratifying when we get the positive feedback and when people give us suggestions, areas in which they like to see something more. We got the feedback last year, hey, more breakouts. So this year there was twice as many breakouts. Like we took that to heart, clearly. So yeah, it's only looking up, and I'm excited for Frankfurt. And again, a little hint for your listeners. I mean, we will be back in Miami Beach in Q1 of next year as well. So, we're going to continue on with that.
Now, I know we've covered a lot in a short period of time, but is there anything else that you want our audience to know about IGEL? Anything that we missed?
I don't know if it's anything we missed, but let me say in summarization of everything we talked about, right? IGEL is a business focused and enterprise focused secure endpoint operating system. Right? We deliver exactly what the users need, nothing more, not all that overhead, and nothing less. Right? It is not, if anything drives me crazy is when people call us a thin client. We are not a thin client. We're not a thin client operating system. We are a full-fledged business operating system, but a business operating system is a different beast than a consumer operating system, and we are focused 100% on business. We're committed to zero trust. I think we're at the forefront of zero trust as it relates to your endpoint operating system. We're all about sustainability, and it's not just sustainability. We didn't really talk about e-waste and that sort of thing. I think it's important, but maybe not. But I'll say and sustainability of budget. Right? There's the needs are increasing. I mean, we didn't touch on AI, but power consumption and needs of AI are pretty huge, right? Something's got to give, but don't make a compromise on your endpoint. Just find a better way, and IGEL helps with that. And then balancing that security with the user experience is really important. So those things, plus, like I mentioned earlier, our growing ecosystem, is pretty impressive. The companies that are partnering with IGEL, I think, speak to the quality that we bring. Um, and look, I don't care if it's ransomware, if it's device lifecycle management, if it's compliance, we've got your back and allow our customers to focus on their business outcomes and not, endpoint headaches.
I think that's a great way to summarize it and wrap things up. And with that, I just want to say thanks again, Carl, for taking time to speak with me and the VMblog audience, and definitely look forward to our next conversation, wherever that is down the road.
That sounds great, David. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.